thinkers. When I was a kid, my dad and I would play catch a lot. And it didn't matter whether it was a baseball, a basketball, or a football. He would always say the same thing to me. If you can touch it, you can catch it. Now, I didn't always catch it, but over time I got better and better. And to this day, if you throw a ball at me, I will probably be able to catch it. And I certainly won't ever make an excuse, because what he was really doing, as he was saying, if you can touch it, you can catch it, was he was taking away any excuses I might make. He was giving me personal responsibility for it, and also a sense of optimism. And I love that combination of personal responsibility and optimism. So to this day, I promise you, throw something at me, I won't be angry, I'll probably catch it. And that gets us to the topic of today's episode, which we're calling the No Excuses episode. If you want to help your organization touch more customers, and what I really mean to say is if you want to help your organization catch more customers, you need to be fully aligned with sales and expand your sense of responsibility all the way through the funnel to closure. The age-old marketing excuse, hey, we filled the pipeline and sales just didn't close, won't cut it. You know that. I know that. And that's just old school thinking. And we're so far beyond that today. So we agree, but it is fair to ask, is there a systematic way to achieve sales and marketing alignment? Good news is there is. And today's guest, Rashmi Vittal, CMO of Conversica, is going to walk us through exactly how you do this, which I'm very excited about. Now, Rashmi, by the way, is a veteran tech marketer, having worked at IBM, Oracle, Neustar, and SAP before joining Conversica in late 2018. Rashmi, welcome to the show.
Hey, Drew, great to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, first of all, we're still in the middle of this pandemic. How's that been treating you personally?
Personally, I call it like the economy. It's like a roller coaster. You have really good days and you have some not so good days. But at the end of the day, what I really cherish is we brought it back to basics. It's like keeping life simple. I'm not on a plane all the time. I'm not having this meeting or that meeting, and just being at home, reconnecting with family, reconnecting with friends, even over Zoom. Is just been great. I actually am using my mobile phone to call people now versus just text. I know, it's insane, but it's, you take it for what it's worth and you try and make the best out of it. As long as everybody around us is staying safe and healthy, that's what really matters.
Yeah, it's funny. I totally agree with you. The found time from not traveling and not commuting is really kind of eye-opening. And you think about how much time I certainly did. I know last year, I think I did 24 different trips.
Wow.
And this year, I think it's 2. Anyway, so what about from a company standpoint? We did a study, and I think you were a participant in that study, where we surveyed B2B CMOs and asked how much impact COVID has had on their 2020 marketing plans. And I think 55% noted that they completely rewrote their plans from scratch. Where were you on that continuum of no changes to our plan to 100% revising?
Yeah, I would probably say we were, probably in between somewhere. There are certainly parts of our strategy that on our marketing plan that focused on a strategy that we frankly just shifted and pivoted quite rapidly at the beginning of Q2. So we put a lot of our focus starting in Q2 into one part of our go-to-market strategy, which is around going upmarket, really focusing on mid-market and enterprise. We had also had a pretty big investment in SMB, but what we decided was to move that into an indirect model versus a direct model over time. That was a big shift, and that also had a shift in our strategy. And then, of course, naturally, for us, being that we sell to sales and marketing people, we sell to account managers, customer success people, we as a group, as a herd, love meeting. And so physical events is still a pretty big thing in our industry. And that's an investment we make as part of our demand gen plan. And once those physical events just evaporated, you had to pivot. right? So
Right.
there was the whole notion of, okay, how are we going to generate the interest and the demand now that this is a digital only world? And hey, if you had really strong digital chops, you probably did just fine. You know,
Right.
if you were really kind of balancing between the offline and online world, and let's say you underinvested in digital, you really had to come right back up to speed. And so I think we just found ourselves in that place of, we have no choice. We got to pivot. We got to do it fast, and let's hustle. And we did. And I'm really proud of how quickly we did that.
So I'm curious, and this will probably get us into the next part of the conversation, but so a lot of marketers that I've talked to, events were as much as 50% of the leads that used to fill the pipeline. And I don't know where you were before, but finding those, replacing those is no small challenge. And it sounds like you did a couple of things. One, you changed your target, right? And so you sort of went after the enterprise. But how what have you done specifically to sort of replace the event leads?
Yeah, so we are doing way more webinars, and very selective about our webinars, but just more of them, in terms of selectivity and really asking, who are you targeting, making sure that we're getting the right target account list, because again, going from those who were holding physical events and then they shifted to a virtual, we saw early on, never netted the same experience. It was a completely different experience, and I would just say it was underwhelming. And so what we found instead is getting really strong topics, really good panelists, whether it was us or us, working with a partner of ours, um, yielded more results. So I think that was important. I think what we've learned moving forward is we're engaging with a wide variety of different vendors now than we would have before for third-party webinar sponsorship, and we're seeing it so far yielding some pretty decent results. But the one thing you can't escape is that when you're able to have that back and forth two-way real-time dialogue at an event, between having the verbal, that plus the physical, and having that communication really helps salespeople out, right? They
Yeah.
thrive in that. So I think we're still trying to figure out how to make that work for them. I mean, salespeople have been, I think, affected quite heavily on this, right? Going now 100% remote, that is hard for a lot of salespeople to deal with. They're just naturally extroverted people, and I think this has been a bit of a challenge for them.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we've seen a lot of is just really starting at the basic level to teach salespeople how to do, how to use LinkedIn and how to use it effectively and how to get conversations. I mean, it's amazing how many successful salespeople out there had almost no profile and didn't know how to engage socially. So that's been an interesting one. I want to go back just quickly to your comment about virtual events, because I totally agree with you that the first initial events out of the box were just horrible. I mean, they were really very bad, and some big brands who had rushed to do it. But then I did see and featured Michelle Beebe from Skillsoft. They did an exceptional job, and I'm going to just toot our horn a little bit. We wrote that up in a recent demand generation report and actually came up with 13 things that Skillsoft did right on their virtual event. For listeners, if you're looking to how to do it, I think it's possible. It's hard. She had 138 people working on their virtual event,
Oh, wow.
but yeah, they had a big production, but it was really well done. It was a great experience, and it gave me a sense of optimism, because the one risk with just over relying on webinars is, how many can you do against the same? It's, there is burnout.
There's burnout. Absolutely. There's burnout. There's overexposure. There's,
Yeah.
there are all those things. I was just trying to keep things fresh and to the, up to date. And I think, there's a difference between, educational content. There's a difference between peer group roundtables. I mean, there's all sorts of formats you can create. I think, to your point on the virtual events, we're actually putting together and starting to host some of our own Conversica hosted events, but more from a field marketing event perspective. And so in that notion, what we're doing is we're really working closely with sales and within their territories and with their customers or their prospects, and saying, what kind of event can we bring to your to your account list that's going to be really meaningful. And I'm excited about what we're doing, but I'm going to read that. I'm going to read your article after this and see how many of those we're checking off.
Yeah, it's a good it's a good summary, and again, I did actually attend multiple virtual events right off the bat from, again, big brand names, a couple of one company that you actually worked at before, and it was scary bad,
Yeah,
and so but on the reverse side of it, Skillsoft got it right, and I think part of it was less technical, and so maybe that's where my bias was. But all the presenters were good, lots of opportunity for interactivity and Q&As, and all of those things. And I go back to the webinar formula. The few good webinars that I've attended, that everything is reversed. You put the customer first instead of the brand first. You put the Q&A second so that you can get the interaction, and then you
right.
get whatever message that you want to do, you put that third. Because what I've seen in webinars go that don't work is when the brand talks for a half an hour about
Yeah,
their vision and where they're going, and it's like, no, I want to really hear about the customer and how they're using it, right?
totally.
And then when they are done, they leave like 7 minutes for questions, and wait, people were there actually uh, to get real-time feedback if they're curious enough to spend an hour with you. So anyway, enough on that. I did want to ask you, as we wrap up this sort of section on COVID, one of the challenges that a lot of CMOs are facing is how to work. We're obviously well past the point of knowing how to work virtually, but still, we're now at a new phase of this where we've been doing it for 4 months. People are getting a little tired of certain things that we do every week, the virtual coffee breaks or whatever. What are you doing to keep your team excited, motivated, and despite the fact that they can't get together physically?
Yeah, great question. Actually, just yesterday we had a happy hour. And we still like it. And half of us brought a beverage, half of us didn't. And it was just because it's nice to take a break and just talk and hear about what's going on in our personal lives. And one of the key things that we're doing is I'm making sure my team is taking vacation. Like before, it felt like in Q2 it was a little taboo to take vacation, or whether people felt comfortable to do it or not. And I'm really trying to push them in this quarter to go take some vacation. I think the other thing we started it early on my team is implementing what I call mental health days, which, one Friday a month or whatever, take off and just go relax and rejuvenate. I think my team specifically valued that quite a bit. And so much so, what I'm excited is that now we're offering that as a company-wide benefit. So we are now implementing take a Friday, not take any Friday, but one Friday a month. We've now designated that everybody can take off. So that's great. So when you are taking that Friday off, you don't feel like you have to check your email, right? Because pretty much everybody's supposed to be taking it off, and that should help people just fully detach and relax.
And so one of the keys there is that you have to do that too.
Yes, well, fair point. So you have to lead by example on this one.
When we had our prep call, it was really funny because Rashmi talked me through this grid on a virtual level, and since then she's actually sent it to me, and it kind of looks like this. I don't know, you can't see it
Can't
because
see it.
there we go, can't see it. All right. Anyway, so let's go through this grid. You've applied this before, right? This isn't just something that you've done at Conversica.
Correct. I mean, I think organically it's manifested to this grid over time, whether, a lot of it is held in my head, and I call it like a mashup of 25 years of being in this industry. But ultimately, as I moved away from more of the development product lifecycle side of the house, and more into the sales, marketing, professional services side of the house, I realized that there's a need to really make sure that marketing and sales and we could talk about marketing and customer success and account management later, but really marketing and sales to have really strong alignment. And we talk about it. And of course, we've heard of all the movies that are out there. Glengarry Glen Ross is a great example. Where are my leads? Where are my leads? And look, it's an age old story, but it really still holds true, right? And so, really interestingly enough, back I think early last year, we ran just a short survey against marketing and sales leaders. And it's really interesting. 87% of sales leaders said that their relationship to marketing is really important, whereas 93% of marketing professionals said it was very important, right? So, just, close, very, very close in that. And so while both sides think that it's really important, we saw that over 2/3 who responded said that while it was good, it could be better, right?
Right.
And I think you have to think about what are all the different ways that you could actually make it better. And so, that grid is something that I always found myself coming back to inherently, in terms of thinking things around what's the go-to-market strategy, how do we really think about demand gen and its relationship with sales in across a couple of different dimensions, and then how do you as a marketing unit really help sales become enabled? And there's more than we can do than I think that's traditionally done.
So let's go through this and sort of try to verbally paint the picture of this grid down on the left side, and paint the picture of what this is.
Like anything, like in any organization, whatever department you're working with, you always have to deal with people, right? People are there. So people are always part of the scenario. But then you also have processes. The way that within the group or across groups, how do you get stuff done and what's the expectation? Because a lot of it is based on expectation and then the desired outcome you're trying to get. And then the last is, how can you use technology today to help you achieve those goals, right? How can it be a vehicle for helping you achieve those goals? So I'd say on the left-hand side, you could have people, you could have process, and you have technology. And then across the top, and this is absolutely from a marketing mindset, right? In terms of what marketers can do to help better align themselves into sales. And I would say the top three would be, one is go-to-market strategy. And for me, I boil it down to something super simple. It's, where's the revenue coming from, right? So you can, if you're going to go set sales loose, where are they going to go get it, right? So you really have to define that go-to-market strategy. I think the second is then execution, which leads to demand generation, right? How are you generating interest, and what is marketing? How much of that interest should come from marketing, and how much of it should actually come from sales? And what's that joint relationship in generating what we love and know as pipeline and revenue? And then the third area is enablement. And while a lot of times it is thought of as sales enablement, which is true, I also think of it as if you have the right people on your team, you should be able to be enabling the company. Marketing's role is not just only outside, externally educating and influencing the market at large. It also should help in influencing within the company as well. And so that's the three I'd have. I'd have go-to-market strategy, demand generation, and enablement.
Okay. So, and by the way, completely agree. And I also like the fact that it's enablement, not sales enablement, because it does acknowledge the fact that it is a organizational, marketing can impact the entire organization, and we want everybody to be brand ambassadors. All right. So we've got people and we've got go-to-market strategy. So that's sort of ground zero, if you will, for your grid. What are we doing in that there? And maybe specifically, talk about that in the context of Conversica and what you've done in the area of people and go to market.
Yeah, I think that is one is around the people you need to have on your team have to be able to have the skill set of critically analyzing the market, having those touch points, whether to understand the buyer. So one is around really needing to understand who your ideal company profile is, who the persona is that maps to that, And then there's a series of work that goes within defining that. But to get that, you need on your team, and this is something that I think is really important, you need the right people on your team to do that. And not just everybody is capable of doing that. And typically I believe where that responsibility falls is in what you consider a product marketing team. And investment in product marketing, I think, is essential, not only to have the various connection points into product so that they could understand the product, technically understand the product, help influence roadmap. But what the key responsibility of product marketing is to take that knowledge, translate it into simple messages, right? And then that can be pushed out into the market and then used to enable sales. But part of that, of product marketing, is also, they should also have responsibility on achieving revenue targets. Because they are the ones who can sit back and analyze the market, determine which industries, market segments, evaluate the viability of those markets, what it would take to penetrate into those markets, scale and grow into those markets, model that out, and produce a strong hypothesis with then market supported research to say, hey, I think this is pretty realistic. So the people there is important, and being able to establish good relationships with sales. Because sales is on the front lines, right? They're the ones who are talking to the customer day in and day out, right? Their prospective prospect. And they're the ones who have all the actual use cases. They're the ones who harness the voice of the customer. If you can either join them during certain aspects of their sales cycle and or really establish good relationships that you can hear from them, or better yet, if you actually have it recorded and then you can listen to those sales calls, you'll learn so much. And that gets infused back into the go-to-market strategy building process.
Okay. There are a couple of things that you said in there that I just want to unpack. One of the things you said about is product marketing making it's the message and the story simple. And I have to say, that is probably my biggest complaint with product marketing across the board in B2B. When I get a report as an agency person from a product marketing, they list no less, on average, of 5 attributes of that product and why it's so great, as opposed to one sort of big hook and then support points to it. So what you end up with is a laundry list. And that they haven't done the homework in order to really understand, I'm not sure if this is it or this is it or this is it, so we're just going to put it all out there. And to me, that's why so much of B2B marketing falls on deaf ears. So help us with that.
Oh, I will. And in fact, it's funny. We at Conversica, we actually have a podcast called Tea and Snippets, and this is one of the episodes that we're going to cover on is messaging. I have probably interviewed hundreds of product marketers. I came from product marketing and running organizations and departments in product marketing at IBM, at Oracle, at SAP. One of the things that when I'm interviewing candidates, I always ask them, tell me, what is your process for creating messaging? You would be surprised at all the different answers that I get. And largely a lot of it is them using their intuition. And what they don't realize, there's actually a decent structure and process that you could use to create very solid messaging. Now, to that point, messaging is what I consider kind of, you build your message house, you build your message framework. That is not necessarily the thing that then you would take and start waving it outside in terms of externally facing material. You have to understand kind of the foundation of what it is you're trying to get across. And then from there, you can build a story around it, right? So I totally agree with you. I'm a big believer in having a big hook, but what is the thing you're going to put your hat on, right? You need to do the messaging work first. And I do actually have a framework for that, which I could get into. That could be a whole other podcast here that we could talk about. But it starts with doing the homework, and you need to know your ICP. You need to understand your persona. You need to understand the challenges that they are facing. And I always say this: put yourself in your customer's shoes. Think as they do, and then start formulating and creating the criteria that matters to them. And when you're able to do that, then you can build the formation of your message, and then you need the creative side. Then you need the good story that can wrap around it so that it's attention grabbing and then interesting and educational for the prospect.
Talking about your grid where we've got people, process, and technology, and then we've got go-to-market strategy, demand generation, and enablement. I think we've talked a fair amount about go-to-market strategy in terms of getting the right people who can do the data analysis to figure out, where find the product marketers that know how to find the story and simplify the story. So let's move on to demand generation and what we need to do there as we sort of work our way across your grid.
Yeah, to foster better sales and marketing alignment, demand generation plays such an important role. And if I had to think about the people part of it, how do demand generation leaders and sales leaders work better together? It really starts with just having a lot of communication and collaboration. So the people need to lean in on the demand gen table together. I think on the process side, really you enable that by having the actual meetings where the reviews can happen. And there needs to be just this honesty where it's not what is marketing generating, what's sales generating, it's what are we generating? And let's just have an honest conversation on how we're doing, however you've segmented the market to meet your revenue targets. And I think the third part on technology is, there's a lot of technology that's used today, right? From your marketing automation tool to your CRM tool, the reporting and analytics is critical to even come to the table with sales and have that conversation to answer the question, how are we doing and what can we do better? And then there's other technologies like what we offer, intelligent virtual assistants that actually can help optimize the funnel at certain parts of the different various stages to have higher contribution into your pipeline and higher contribution into your revenue. So how sales and marketing comes together in demand gen is just really strong collaboration and communication, viewing and having an agreement in terms of assessing how we're doing, and then letting the technology tools help you to bridge that gap where they exist.
Okay, perfect. And then we get to this last area of enablement. Let's talk about the key insights there to make sure that marketing is, giving sales the tools they need to close and continue. So talk about that part of the grid.
Yeah, so I think a lot of this too is establishing a regular cadence of education, knowing that education is fundamental and paramount to the success of the sales team. Working with, and this is a cross-functional thing too, working cross-functionally, whether you need product or customer success to come in and educate the sales team, but knowing that that's there. Salespeople like consistency. They like to know what's in front of them. So if you have a regular cadence of education for them, they're going to feel like they're being supported. Now, how you support them, there are playbooks that you should use. Every organization, regardless of who you're selling to, should develop the playbooks and understand the methodology you're supporting in your sales motion, and make that a kind of a standard within the sales organization. Not only does it create higher performing sales teams, but it also helps in recruiting and building larger sales teams because they know that you kind of have your stuff together and you know where the success is going to come from. And lastly, from a technology perspective, have the resource libraries, have the enablement tools, use third parties to come in to help teach new skills. I think this is super important. And now with where we're at with the pandemic and everybody being remote, you need technology to help support that type of education and enablement.
So I'm looking at the grid, and I know that if you're listening to this, you're going to want to go to the show notes and look at the grid because it really is a wonderful way. And I'm guessing that any new CMO that follows this playbook will be most grateful to you, Rashmi, for just laying it out in such simple and clear terms. And I'm curious, from your standpoint, where are you? I mean, have you finished all 9 of these areas?
You're never finished. You're always working on it. It's kind of like the Golden Gate Bridge. Once you're done painting one side of it, you've got to come on back to the front. And so no, this is a constant evolution. So what have we done? We have pretty much hit every square on this grid at different times and based on need. I will say last fall, we did a lot of work around go-to-market strategy in answering the question where the revenue is going to come from. What that means is we determined the industry verticals we were going to go after. We revamped our ICP and our personas. And we estimated the revenue potential out of those market segments. Then what we did was we worked with demand gen and sales and said, hey, this is what we think. Do you agree? Yes or no? Obviously, we picked certain industry verticals where we already had a foothold. Organically, it just kind of happened. And so what we want to look at is say, okay, how do we create and scale against that? And then there's some new industries where we're like, okay, we've got to try to penetrate this. Let's see how we do, right? So then you've got to hand that. I feel like that's more of the game plan over to demand gen, into that side of the house, so they could take that and now they feel like they have their own playbook that they can go build their marketing programs around and execute against. And so, yes, we have done that. We are very much so focused on our go-to-market strategy. All of our programs is based on that. And we're using a lot of the technology. We're using all the technology that I have described here. And then in terms of enablement, I'm really proud. We actually just in Q2, we knew things were going to be a little slower on the pipeline and closing side of the house because of COVID. So we really took it as an opportunity to develop a brand new playbook for our sales organization and then to educate them on that playbook. We hold regularly weekly lunch and learns for the sales team. We have guest speakers come and across within the company and outside the company to come and talk and educate the sales folks. And right now we set up a resource library now it's nothing technically savvy, it's in G Drive, but guess what? It's all there. And anytime a salesperson comes to me and says, Rashmi, where's the latest presentation or where's the case study? And then there's like a ... ellipses on the Slack, and they're like, oh, yes, I know. You said Conversica Sales Library. Yes, I will go find it, right? So it's training them to go use those resource libraries and then the enablement tools that we have for them to just try and be as successful as possible.
So assuming a CMO embraced this model and the grid, what would you say is the one pitfall? Where's the landmine in this that they can avoid based on your experience?
So there could be so many. There's so many here.
Yeah.
You have to refrain. You may feel like it's so right to do. Like, we just have to do this. Because whether in your past experience you had success doing it or whatnot, what this is really about to enable this grid, and I can't speak volumes about it, and the people part is so important. If you don't have the trust of your sales leadership, if you don't have the trust of your CEO, if you don't have the trust of your customer success or your product teams, they're not going to buy into this, especially on things like the playbook, right? So you really have to engage them. You have to have them be part of the solution, have them be part of the sausage making, and then they'll feel like they have a piece of ownership. And once you get a piece of ownership, then you're getting everybody kind of orchestrated down the path. And the reasons why I do something may not be the same reasons why my customer success leader does something or my sales leader does something. So understanding their motivations and then appealing to them, which as marketers we do, right? You have to understand the other person's motivation and appeal to them. You've got to do that. And then when you have that synergy, then you're going to see progress, but it doesn't happen overnight. You have to continually work on it. You have to demonstrate quick wins. You have to build confidence in the system. And the real, when success happens is when you stop feeling like you're the mouthpiece and everybody else is talking about it because they're seeing their own results and they're happy about that.
I love that as a way of wrapping up the show because, many of us start in our career. It was about marketing has this ta-da moment where there's this big reveal, and what you're really talking about is there. Marketing is sort of and sales are acting as one, and so in that case, there is no big reveal. There's no ta-da moment. It is building trust through collaboration and building trust by, as you said, well, there's the quick win, but there's also making them part of the process. And it feels like that might take more time, and sometimes it does, but it pays off in spades. And I think that's such a good observation, that the sales and that and part is really important. Let's put asterisks and make it larger than the other two, because that's what we're talking about here, is really saying no excuses. Marketing has this job, sales has that job. No, no, no. We have a job or a remit to grow the company one way or another. And we're going to do it with our partners in sales. So cool. Well, Rashmi, thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your experience and your very simple but important grid.
You bet, Drew. It was fun to be on the show, and thanks for having me.
So, for all the listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, you can thank me and Rashmi by writing a 5-star review on your favorite podcast channel, or by sharing it with a fellow marketer. Renegade Thinkers Unite is written and directed by Drew Neisser. Hey, that's me. Audio production is by Sam Beck. The show notes are written by Melissa Caffrey. Our Duke intern, Prowse Smithson, produces the YouTube version. The music was created by the amazing Burns twins, and the intro voice is Adam Cornelius. To find the transcripts of all episodes, suggest future guests, or learn more about quite possibly the best B2B marketing agency in New York City, visit renegade.com. And until next time, keep those renegade thinking caps on and strong.